Hey folks, hope you guys are having a good New Year's Eve. That's right, it's New Year's Eve 2022, which means tomorrow will be the first day of 2023. 223 versus 2023. Kind of weird, like every time a year goes by at this point, it seems like a more surreal number, and part of that is that I was born in the 1980s, so, a big thing in the 80s and 90s was the year 2000 for some reason. I think because it was a nice whole number, right? Like 2000. It's the year 2000. Like there was a lot of jokes about it. There was a lot of memes about the year 2000, the Y2K bug. I think people liked it because there's a whole number. There's an old saying like, we're going to party like it's 1999. As if 1999 has some kind of special significance. It's not, like 2000, the world's going to end. And then 2012, there was a belief like, oh, maybe the world will end in 2012 because this ancient calendar only showed things up to the year 2012. And, that didn't really come about either. So like 2023, it's like this is like more than 20 years after the turn of the millennium, which seems a little weird when you spent the first 20 years of your life being told what a big deal the millennium was going to be. What a big deal the year 2000 was going to be. Gas lock breaking on my chair here. So anyway, 2023, I'm looking forward to it. I do have some plans for the channel, so I thought I'd have a show. I might play some games here in a little bit. But I thought it would also be fun to just kind of talk about New Year stuff and, things from 2022, kind of recap the year, talk to you all about how your year went. We're entering kind of year 3 of 2020. 2020 being an exceptionally strange year and one that I think upended a lot of norms. So the first thing I really want to talk about with all of that was the fact that I moved, right? So I had this big move and that disrupted a lot of my work. I'm an author. That's like the main thing that I do with my free time is I write books. And I had this idea in 2022 that I was going to do a game. I was going to do a visual novel. I feel like that's a good way to use the skills that I have and apply them in a really meaningful way to produce something that's outside of the normal media, that is books. It's not that people don't read books. There's always this thing, do people read books? Did people stop reading books? I think there's always been a small subset of the population that is avid in reading, that likes to read a lot of books. And I don't think that's really changed a lot. I think if you were to go back to 1985, I don't think you would find a bigger percentage of the people doing a lot of reading. I think maybe if you went really far back, like before TV and radio, if you went back to 1895, you'd find a lot more people reading. But even then, you might find people ridiculing people for reading too many books, like instead of working or doing something else. If you think of a game like baseball, baseball was created at the end of the 19th century, and it reflects the amount of free time people had at that time. Baseball is a game that takes a long time to play, and that's because people had many free hours, especially on Saturday and Sunday, to play a long game. Now in 2022, people are busier actually than they were back in the into the 19th century. So baseball doesn't really fit that well into a modern world. People will play softball maybe on a Tuesday night. It's still around, but it's not like as big a game because our culture's changed a little bit. So yeah, you might find more people reading in 1895, but not that many more, I think. I think the avid reader population is still small. So anyway, looking outside of that and doing something that's like a game, a different media, or a graphic novel. These are things that really interest me because I want to reach more people, right? I want to tell stories to more people, and I think the younger generations certainly they connect really well with video games, and visual novels are big. Visual novels are big in Japan, and they could certainly be big here, bigger here than they are, but they don't have quite as much exposure and market traction. And I think part of it is that there is a defined genre style to visual novels. That is, they are influenced by, Japanese manga and anime. So characters tend to have a very specific look when you are portraying them. So some of the ideas I had was rather than doing things strictly in that genre, is to do that, but do more Western style art, just something that's a little bit different, and kind of see where that goes. So I don't know. I might do that in 2023. I have a couple more book projects I need to wrap up that are left over from 2022. Anyway, because of the move, I was like, I can't devote the time necessary to see a project like that to fulfillment while also doing all of the other stuff that I want to do. So that was kind of the problem with moving, is that it really took months out of my productive life. So I had to just go back to basics and be like, okay, what can I put out? What do I know how to put out quickly and efficiently? And the answer is books. So I published some more books. I'm trying to think how many books I've actually put out in 2022. I want to say, let me see. I think I put out the third Moonsong book. I had a novella in the Pulp Rock book, so that's kind of 2. Then I had Alshafalda and Afterglow. So I guess 4 books. I guess we did 4 this year, which is not that bad. I could have done more or done longer books, but again, like, time was really short. So go back to basics. Like, this is what we're going to put out. We're going to put out these books. So I think that was helpful. Alshafalda didn't sell that well. I didn't expect it to sell that well. Like, why did you not expect the book to sell that well? It's like, yeah, you always hope that, like, people will see what's up, but it's not keeping with the genre traditions, and it's really not keeping with, like, the modern corporate sensibility as far as stories go, and it doesn't really stick with pulp sensibilities either. It's its own thing. It's a tragedy, and that's the thing. Is, like, I get kind of associated with pulp writing because I talk about it a lot, and my writing is not really pulp writing. First of all, it doesn't come out fast enough, but I don't market my books in that way. I don't write to market the way a pulp writer would write. I write the things that really interest me, that I want to exist, that are part of my creative vision. And if people don't like them or don't want to buy them, that's okay. I still want to create them. Now, Alshafalda is a story that I actually held on to for... I'm not sure how long I held on to it. I think 2 years. I wrote it in 2020. So talk about, this is like, we're coming up on the 3rd year of 2020. I wrote it in 2020, but then, like, all the election stuff happened, and the pandemic was going on, and so it just really seemed like a bad time to publish a tragedy. And so I was like, okay, when things turn around, people will like that kind of story more. Well, things never really turned around, but I was like, well, I got to put it out sooner or later. So I went ahead and just put it out. And I thought that was good. I enjoyed writing the book, and I enjoyed editing it, and I enjoyed really working on it the way that I did. But it's not going to be everybody's thing. Do you think visual novels with a light turn-based fighting gameplay is still a visual novel? Like 80% being reading and 20% actual gameplay, or maybe have it where you can just skip the gameplay if desired? I don't know. That's a good question. So to me, that's just a full game. Even if it's a story-heavy game or like a cutscene-heavy game, that's still like just a game to me. So you guys can have obviously different opinion of it. I like gameplay, and I think gameplay works. I've played through a couple of visual novels that were pretty gameplay heavy, and that's fine. They get kind of lumped in as visual novels because their presentation is like a visual novel. Like you have a character and a character, and then blah, 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 and then like, just like really simple animation and stuff. So it gets kind of lumped in with visual novels. The whole idea of visual novel is that it's gameplay light. It's game light, right? Game light, what does that mean? Well, it just means that the gameplay is not the focus or the barrier. So if you were to compare it to something on the other side of the spectrum, like Dark Souls or Demon Souls, is there a story? I mean, there's a story kind of, right? But it's the opposite. The emphasis is entirely on the gameplay, like what you're doing in the game. And the gameplay is a barrier to progressing in the game. So you are interacting with the gameplay in order to just have more gameplay. Whereas in a game light, the gameplay is not a barrier to proceeding through the game. That's really what it is that the fail state is set really low so that the gameplay is not a serious barrier. Like maybe there could be gameplay that you might fail once or twice, but it's really just the gameplay is a kind of a break from the story. Whereas cutscenes are a break from the gameplay. This is the opposite. Like the gameplay is a break from the story. So like maybe an inversion of Final Fantasy or something like that, where you have cutscenes that break up the gameplay, and on this one it is gameplay that breaks up cutscenes, right? It breaks up the story. So that's really, I guess, the direction of visual novels. So for me, what would I want to produce? Well, I'd probably produce one without the gameplay, believe it or not, because gameplay takes up a lot of programming time and it takes up a lot of focus to do it correctly, and it requires testing. Whereas if you're just jumping into RenP or one of these visual novel engines, it's really easy to just make a visual novel without any gameplay and feel reasonably confident that it's going to function correctly on every platform you publish it on. And because I'd be doing this more or less solo, that's more what I would do. If I had a team to work with or something, like if I had multiple people to do something with, then I would think more about gameplay. But I like, I have a strategy for the way that I do things, which is I tend to not go, all right, let's do the giant project. I'm like, let's put my foot in and learn about the process of doing what I'm going to do. Then I will up the ante and do something more significant. I'll do something bigger next time. Now I didn't. Well, I kind of did that with publishing too. Like with publishing, I published a one-off book, and then I started working on series stuff and designing my own covers and things like that. So, I think a great way to get into book publishing is just to put out a short free book, and maybe I'll do like a video series or something on like how to do a short free book, like turn your novel or novella or novelette into a book, like publish it, put a cover on it, do the whole thing so that people can learn the publishing process, getting it out on using Drafted Digital or Amazon and making it free, doing that whole thing. I've done stuff like that in the past, but it might be good to just have like one dedicated video. Like, here's how you take your story you've already written and you make it a book that people can download or buy. So it's really good to know that process before you're like, I'm going to write a 20-book series. Like if you're jumping into the water with a 20-book series and you don't know what you're doing publishing-wise or like marketing-wise, it can be real discouraging because partly because you'll get to like book 4 and you'll be like, actually my writing on book 1 sucks. I should take these down and like rewrite them so that the ending's correct. You learn that stuff kind of as you go, so it's good to start with maybe a one-off or something like that. Persona 4 is a really great visual novel with a lot of great gameplay. I don't consider it a visual novel at all. I consider Persona 4 just a JRPG. It's JRPG gameplay front to back. Yeah, there's story in it for sure, and there's a lot of character interactions. It's very story heavy, but to me it's very much a JRPG. You have these long dungeon crawls. That's what they are. Like you go into the TV world and you crawl through the dungeon doing JRPG gameplay, and it's got that flavor, that music. The focus really to me is on the gameplay, but the story of course is bound up with that. It's a great mix. There's a great mix of like really story focused JRPG. JRPGs in general are very story focused. Like, is Final Fantasy 13 a visual novel? There's, if you let me look it up on YouTube. There's like Final Fantasy 13 the movie, which is just all the cutscenes they put on YouTube. Which, I mean, I would almost like want to reshoot them in 4K. That might be fun to do. Yeah, let me see how long it is. All cutscenes. How long is it though? It does not. 8 hours and 38 minutes. Okay. Should redo it in 4K. 2020 re-edit. We should do it. Oh, it's an 8 hour. There's an 8 hour to cut 40 minutes out. Okay. Yeah. I would say like, yeah, consider that. 8 hours of cutscenes. That's a lot, right? But the whole game is like 50 to 80 hours long, right? So, you know, it's still predominantly gameplay. There's lots of banter that happens in the gameplay. There's lots of story that happens during the gameplay. But there's a lot of cutscenes, right? So I think Persona 4 is more in that area. I consider it a JRPG. For me to program, I mean, you could do a visual novel. I could do a visual novel with JRPG gameplay, or just do a really story-heavy JRPG. If I kept the graphics simple enough, like to just do pixel art, I could do all pixel art by myself, without the help of any like real artist or like highly skilled artist. Because I don't know, I've been doing pixel art since I was a kid. Actually, like I used to like do my own weird games when I was a teenager, and I used to do them in really weird ways where I would take games on a Macintosh, because the way the resource forks worked on a Macintosh, and you could replace all the resources with whatever graphics you wanted, and then you could dive into a bunch of different data forks and like change how the game played. So you could take like a Frogger. I had a Frogger game and I turned it into a different game, doing it that way, right? So I changed all the graphics and I changed the way the game worked, so it became like a space game or something. You can do things like that. I used to do things like that, so I could probably do that if you kept the graphics to like Final Fantasy 6 level. But that's not, I don't know, that's not what people want in the visual novel space. Maybe if you did that and then you had like some fully rendered character portraits and stuff, that might work. But that's a lot of programming. That's my point. It's like, that's a lot of programming, and the more complicated the programming gets, the more you're going to have to spend playtesting and working out the bugs to make sure that it actually works on all the platforms. And the more you're going to have to work after release, because bugs are going to come up after release, and you're going to have to patch. You're going to have to spend time fixing things to patch them. So I'd like to not do a whole lot of patching after something launches. That's what I would think. Anyway, so I might do that in 2023. I haven't decided. Now, of course, in 2022, we had, kind of the explosion of AI art. And I've done a bunch of content on how people basically don't understand AI art. And most of the arguments against it are from people that are afraid their job is going to be replaced by AI art. And if you're a really bad artist, that might be the case. But for the vast majority of people, that's just not going to be the case at all. Like, AI art can't really replace a legitimate artist for a lot of reasons that I've gone into. It can, however, be a useful tool. So it could be a really useful tool for making visual novel, right? Like I could render a bunch of backgrounds and then paint over them and make them good, right? Like fix all the problems that come out. And then you could use them to generate basic character portraits and then hand those to a real artist to render them in a more detailed and like correct style, rather than because AIs, we call them AI, they're not actually intelligent. They just copy what's existed before. So you really need the mind of an artist to produce a new synthesis, something that's really new and unique. But it could be a really useful tool to cut down on production time a lot. So you render a bunch of backgrounds, and then you can have your artist spend his time just taking the concepts and doing character portraits or like fixing the background, you know. So it could cut down on the production time immensely. And it could also mean that as the writer, I could do a lot more work on the visual space without having to rely heavily on an artist to do every single pixel. I could do a lot of that stuff, and then the artist can really just focus on the character portraits. The things that people are really going to notice any kind of like detailed deviation is in faces, the way faces are rendered. I was talking to an artist friend of mine in like a Twitter group chat the other day that's like, there's a lot of comic artists that can't render like anatomy correctly. And you notice it whenever a character is in anything other than direct or profile view. If it's like a quarter turn, if you think about how my face looks at a quarter turn, the features will start to get really distorted and weird. And at first glance, you're like, that looks weird. People notice any kind of flaw in a face right away. They're not going to kind of pass by those details unless you can disguise them a lot with like a lot of colors or like overworking the ink or stuff. And that's what a lot of modern comic artists do. They draw faces incorrectly and then ink the crap out of them to cover up how weird the faces look. And this has been going on for like almost 30 years. So most of you guys know what's up with that. But yeah, AI art could let me do the game in a lot shorter production time. It makes it more feasible to have a smaller team, smaller number of people involved in a project, fewer people to pay, more profit at the end of the day. And the benefit of all of that, of reducing labor costs, is that it lets you be more creative with your final product, believe it or not. For the reason that, like, I made Al Shafalda knowing it probably wasn't going to sell a lot of copies because it's not like your standard like bullshit corporate piece of fantasy garbage. And it's not a pulp thing where like a hero saves the day or something. It's a classic tragedy. It's more like Children of Húrin or something like that. There's a reason that like Tolkien's books, most of his books were never published while he was alive. It's because publishers were like, no one wants to read this. They wouldn't publish Silmarillion. Why? They didn't publish it until he was already a giant phenom and was dead, really. They didn't publish it until like he had such a cultural impact they couldn't not publish it. But if J.R.R. Tolkien had not had the success that he had towards the end of his life and directly afterwards, the Silmarillion would never have been published. Children of Húrin would never have been published. These extra books he wrote and worked on, knowing that they'd never be published, would never have seen the light of day. Why? Read Children of Húrin. It's an amazing book, but for your standard fantasy reader, they would hate it. It doesn't match at all what the standard fantasy tropes are. It's completely different. It's a tragedy about a tragic character, about a downfall of a noble character. What else is there to say about it? Al Shafalda does similar things. So I expect it not to sell well because it's not going to hit all of these little tropes that the fantasy readers want. Fantasy readers want these certain kinds of things, and I don't do that. I don't write to market, guys. I just don't do that. It's not my vision. I care about my vision more than I care about selling books. That's reality. And at a certain point, I have to stop and look and like, okay, there's nothing wrong with writing to market if that's what you want to do. If that's what inspires you is to write books that people want to read, that's great. I also want to write books that people want to read, but more than that, I want to write the books that I want to exist, that I want to not be non-existent, I guess, right? It's a creative impulse. So anyway, if you can reduce costs, then you can produce more products that are not popular. Products that are more artistic, products that are a bigger gamble, because you're not having that much risk. If you don't have to pay hundreds of dollars for a book cover, you can publish your crazy book that's completely outside of the box and be okay with it and make money at it. Make money, even if it's like not a huge amount of money. Everything that you put into a product is an investment, and you have to make a return on that investment. So if you can reduce the labor cost, that lets you take a lot more risks. It increases the amount of creativity that exists in the world because you don't have to do things to market as much. You can target a smaller subset of the market, or you can do things without considering what the market already wants, what the existing market already wants you to do, if that makes any sense. So anyway, yeah, I might still do a visual novel this year. So yeah, that's the that's the big one, was the move. The move disrupted a lot of my plans for doing wild and crazy things, and that's just how it is. New Year's a good time to stop and turn around. I'm going to do a couple things with the channel. I'm going to start a channel membership, and I'm going to put a lot of my audiobooks that are on the channel in there, and they'll still be free ones. But, for people that want to support the channel, they can get things like audiobooks and other free content that you would normally have to pay for on Amazon. And I might relaunch Patreon simply because there's nothing wrong with Subscribestar, but Patreon integrates better with like everything. So I can actually offer a lot better free content through, or not free, but like subscriber content for things like I could give you guys free books if you're on Patreon. And that's actually really hard to do on Subscribestar. So I'll probably redo that. I don't like Patreon very much as a company. That's why I stopped using them, is I wasn't making a ton of money off them anyway. But the reality is that people did not stop using Patreon and start using Subscribestar. That didn't happen. People just I disappeared. I took down my Patreon and people just stopped giving me money. Right? They stopped paying for my extra stuff. That's reality. It's the unfortunate reality of the hegemon of anything. Like, why are you still on YouTube? It's like, because YouTube is the biggest. And what would happen if I went off of YouTube is that it's not like people would follow me to Odyssey or to BitChute. Some people are on those, and I put my videos on those for very good reasons. And I fully support anybody that just uses those platforms and wants to just do video on those platforms. But the reality is I'd lose 90% of my viewers. Hey, that's reality. Same thing, like, oh, why are you on Twitter? Why don't you get on Parler or some other social media site? Why don't you get on Minds? It's like, you have to kind of go with the hegemon when you're trying to attract attention to people, when you're trying to interact with people, when you're trying to have, I really love Twitter because I can talk to people. I could talk to other people all day, right? If I go on to Gab, it's just a ghost town. Who am I talking to? There's like no one to talk to on Gab. People who like my books aren't on Gab. Sorry. That's kind of how it is. People whose books I like are not usually on Gab. Like, I would love for Gab to be a bigger thing, but it's not. You kind of have to stick with the hegemon till the wheels fall off the wagon. And that's the reality for that. So I may relaunch Patreon. In fact, I probably will. And we'll just kind of see how things go with that. I'll offer like a lot of free content through that. So people could even, be a subscriber on Patreon for a month, read books that they want to read, and then cancel it if they want to. So it's basically just like library access. There's going to be people that would be like, I'll just do a 1 month subscription and then I'll download all the books and then I'll cancel. But most people actually aren't like that, right? Most people, they interact with Patreon not as a way to gain value, but to pay for value that they're already getting elsewhere. That's a thing we have to remember. A lot of people, they get kind of overly obsessed with intellectual property, have this imagination that everybody is trying to steal books and stuff all the time. And that's not the way most people operate, because there's a personal relationship here. Even though like I can't see your face, I could just see you typing, even though there's still a people call it a parasocial relationship. And it's more like I am actually interacting with you. You are a real person and I'm a real person. And so because there's this personal interaction, people are much less enticed to just steal, if that makes any sense. To be like, well, I'm just going to take all his books and not give him any money. It's like, that's something you do to someone you dislike, not someone that you know and you like, right? So I think like the future of neo-patronage will make this kind of obsession with controlling every little bit of content you put out and charging money for it in 100 different places. It's going to make it less important for the little guy. It might still be important for corporations. Corporations are going to remain obsessed with making sure that they have the same kind of control over income streams that they had in the 20th century. But for the little guy, it's not going to be all that important, because you have a relationship with your viewers or your readers and they're going to buy your book, not because they have to buy it to acquire the book, but rather because they want to buy it, because they want to support the author. They want to buy a product from the author. They feel like he's done a service and they want to pay for that service, or they feel obligated to pay for that service because that's the way it works, right? I'm doing a service to the world by putting out content, and then people get value from that and they pay either by watching ads or by like buying a book, whatever it is. So the return for value is something that's kind of, it's built into our moral DNA, so to speak. So I think IP control is less important for the little guy, and it's much more important for corporations. And so those are the people who are really pushing corporate IP laws, by the way. So this whole, like, we need to stop AI art thing, it's basically corporate backed, right? Disney doesn't want AI art because it allows the little guy to compete better with them. And if they can make it so that none of the, Mid-Journey and all that stuff gets shut down, then they can have their own in-house AI stuff that uses their own copyrighted images because they own the copyrights for like everything. And then they're going to use the tools on their own where, the little guy just doesn't get access to any of those tools. That's the IP obsession with AI art in a nutshell. Now, AI has already been around for writing. Like most of the articles on the internet are written by AI guys. I shouldn't need to break this to you, but if you type in anything like to do with a product, for instance, type in like iPad 2013 versus iPad 2022 versus iPad 2021. You're going to have 20 articles written by AI using search engine optimization factors to rank at the top of Google. It'll be very obvious that a human didn't write them because finding the information you want to find in them is almost impossible. So they're written by AI, maybe edited a little bit by a human and published. But in a lot of cases, it's fully automated. AI has already been around in the writing scene for years now. For whatever reason, it got to art, and people who draw like anime porn got afraid and jumped on a corporate bandwagon to try to stop people from using the tool, which really would only benefit corporations. They're the ones who benefit the most from their management of the legal system of intellectual property versus the conceptual system, which is like, I create a book, it's my book, right? I own it because it's mine and I made it. The same reason that like you create something and you own it. If you create a physical object like a table, obviously you own it. But if you create an intellectual product like a story, your authorship is your ownership as well. And people understand this. They don't want to like pay somebody who didn't write a book for a book. Does that make sense? Like if nobody that's watching this wants to pay a dishonest person who's publishing my book and taking my money, right? Why? Well, he didn't write it, right? He's basically leeching off of my work. People understand this at a basic level. Like you don't need to dig into some sort of copyright law to understand that, or trademark law to get to the heart of what that's about. Like we know that people who create things and offer them for sale, those are the people who should be selling them, not other third parties who copied them and then offer them for sale. Does that make sense? Anyway, I think IP law becomes even more moot with AI art, which you can't really copyright, and AI writing, which you can't really copyright at all. It's not useful for the most part. I mean, it's useful, but it's not like a replacement for the real thing. And anyway, it's here, so might as well figure out how to deal with it. All right. The other thing, so anyway, that's for the channel next year. I'm going to try to do more reviews. Those get a lot of views, and I think people really like them. So I'm going to try to do a couple movie reviews a month. I don't love going to the movie. In fact, I hate going to the movies now. Post-pandemic, it's really not an enjoyable experience for me. But I'll see what I can do as far as just reviewing maybe 2 movies a month. Movies as entertainment for me are also pretty low on the list for what I like to do with 2 hours of free time. If I have an entire 2 hours of free time, which is really rare, I almost want to do anything else besides watching a movie. I have so many things on my plate that are more important to me, But I'll try to do a couple movie reviews because that's a way that people really access stories. One of the reasons I wanted to do a visual novel is that that's a way people access stories in the 21st century. Well, movies are still a way that people access stories in the 21st century. So people who don't read books still watch movies, and so they're still interested in stories, and they're still interested in how the stories work. And maybe people who make movies want to know more about the craft, want to know more about storycraft. So I'll try to do more storycraft videos. Like I've done a huge amount of content on how to write stories, but there's always a little bit more, another detail to talk about, another trope that you can use in your movie or your game or your book or your comic, you know. So I'll talk about more of that stuff. So I'll try to do a couple reviews a month, and we'll see how that goes. If I plan it and have like, okay, this is the number of videos I'm doing per month, then I can have a really realistic view of what I can do. Because if it's like 20 videos a month, it's not gonna happen. It's just I don't have time to do that many videos. But I could do 10 or 12 a month, like with no problem. I used to do one a day. For a while, I did one a day. I did 30 videos a month, and like I made some money, but it's a lot of work, and you also produce a lot of content that just doesn't hit, and that's always disappointing. You're like, oh, I made this video and it got 300 views, but it's kind of like every time you roll the dice, and sometimes you make a video and it gets 100,000 views, and that's the way that YouTube works. It's kind of rolling the dice a lot of times. Just need to promote it in every video. Subscribestar, I mean, yeah. The thing about Subscribestar and Patreon is I don't like the model as far as creatively. I don't like having to produce content on a set time schedule every month for people because they're already paying for it. It's kind of a pressure that doesn't fit well into my life. My life is more about doing what I can do at any given moment. It's maximizing every moment, not sticking to schedules very strictly. Like my family has a very loose schedule. My mom, my wife and mother of my children, she has a work schedule that is fairly strict, and that means other things in their life need to be less strict. So I homeschool my kids. When we do the homeschooling is not set, but that we do it every day is set. When I work out is not set, but that I do it every day is set. Sometimes, like last night, I worked out at 1 a.m. because my daughter was still awake, my wife was still awake, so I had to go lift weights. Actually, like 12:30, right? So I had to go out in the garage and lift weights for 45 minutes in the middle of the night because that's when I had time to do it. Likewise, it's the same thing with work. A lot of times I'm working well after midnight because that's the only time I have to work. So if I have something that's really strictly scheduled and it's a lot of things, like I could probably do one strict thing a month. But if it's any more than that, then it's like I'm going to be pulling all-nighters every single week, and that's not good for my health. Staying up till 2 or 3 is not a big deal to me because I don't need that much sleep. If I get 6 hours, I'm good. And my kids will sleep till 9. But if I'm up till 6 a.m., like multiple nights, or I'm staying up 24 hours, 36 hours, which I've done, it's terrible for my health. And I don't want to get in that position where I have to deliver a product and then the product is subpar because I've rushed it or because I had to pull 3 all-nighters to get it done because some other stressful thing popped up in my life. I have lots of obligations in my life, my children, my wife, my extended family, like take care of the older people in my life, all that kind of stuff. Things pop up. People die, people get married, people get born, right? All those things are happening all the time. So having like a really, I have this business where it's just whatever I can produce, I produce. And, for December, there was a lot less content because it was Christmas time and it was super stressful. It's one of the reasons I really dislike Christmas is that it is completely disruptive to my process. It's all time spent on stressful activities and 0 time spent on fun things. And things that are meaningful to me. That's why, the Christmas season is just, I really, really don't enjoy it at all. I know that lots of people like Christmas, but when you're me and it's like you're trying to maximize your work time, you're trying to get things done that matter, it's really disruptive. And it's disruptive to my health. Like there's a lot of bad food, I gain weight because there's bad food and I can't exercise as much because I'm so busy during the entire Christmas season. So yeah, I really prefer January is always a good month because Christmas is done. Get back to routine. You can establish your routines really good at the beginning of the year because the stress of Christmas is over. What would you think of doing reviews of more classic movies? Example, Godfather. I would love to do that. I love Godfather. Like, why is it classic? Those are great ideas, and I really appreciate that. You're not the first person to suggest it, Brian. And it's a really good suggestion. Most new movies, I have zero interest in watching. That's the truth. It's like blockbuster movies are what's going to bring in the views for the channel, and I just don't enjoy them anymore. I haven't enjoyed them for a long time. Classic movies are fun. Like, it'd be fun to do reviews of, like, they might make a Heat 2. Like, I can't believe Michael Mann would do that. Like, I think Val Kilmer can't even talk anymore, and he's like the only character who survived. So I don't know what they'll do for Heat 2. But, I could do something on Heat. Like, why is Heat such a good movie? Why do we love it so much? And I could tell you, like, right away, it's the characters. It's the characters drive this story. There's, like, 4 unique characters, each with different motivations, and then there's a plot with it. There's a heist. And the heist is honestly way further back from the characters doing things and being motivated and making philosophical statements about, like, if you want to make moves on the street, make no attachments, have nothing in your life you can't walk out on in 30 seconds flat when you feel the heat around the corner. Stuff like that. So yeah, classic movies are a good idea. I appreciate that. I mean, I have a Gab account, Waylon, but I don't ever use it. So, I mean, I should cross-post things on Gab, but I have no followers. No one I want to interact with is on Gab. It's the problem with social media is that it really becomes a matter of, like, a technical monopoly, right? Like, people don't want to use 20 different social medias. They want to use, like, 1 or 2. So it's pretty much Twitter and YouTube for me. And I don't even use Facebook anymore. Facebook is too depressing. I stopped using Facebook in 2020, about the time that the whole George Floyd thing happened. Everyone was posting black pictures, jumping on this self-humiliating bandwagon of I'm bad because I'm white. People that are normally very rational-minded people were doing it out of social pressure. And I just can't watch people that I know humiliate themselves. It's too depressing. Like, it's too depressing to see somebody who is a good person and normally thinks things through get on social media and make a fool of themselves because they think other people will like them more for it. And other people will, like they feel obligated to make some kind of black post on Instagram because of an event that they don't even know the details of. But they immediately jump on the bandwagon that the media tells them to. They do what the media tells them to do. It's just so depressing. I stopped using Instagram for the same reason. And I would like to use those platforms more. But every time I use them, I just, like, it's like an affliction. Twitter, because I don't know the idiots that I see on Twitter, it's not as bad. But it's really bad on Instagram because, like, these are people I know and like. And it's, like, yeah, it's just horribly depressing to watch people do all the self-humiliation rituals. And they, like, social media gives you, like, a little low-cost way that you can engage in a struggle session and humiliate yourself for the approval of the state and for the approval of people that will never forgive you. Now, they don't actually approve of you, but, like, it gives you, I'll just do this real quick, versus having to go into a public square and talk about how, how bad it is to be white. I remember I had a meeting back when I was a teacher, and this woman was trying to do this presentation on, like, white privilege, and I just got up and walked out. And, like, the principal didn't care. I think the principal walked out too. It's just like, I think it was the Hispanic principal's like, I'm not listening to this. This is stupid. Like, why are we listening to this presentation at school? Should we be talking about how to, like, improve educational outcomes? Isn't that why we're here? Anyway. You'll be surprised to know the Witcher spinoff from Netflix was terrible. I'm not surprised. Both users and reviewers hate it. It's shocking, I know. I didn't watch the series because they cast a bunch of ugly women. And, like, this sounds really shallow until you realize, like, what they're doing and why they did it. It's like Hollywood has infinite attractive women willing to work who are good actresses. Why do they cast ugly women? Because they want ugly women on screen. They want to, it's kind of like a little bit of humiliation there. I'm not watching ugly women, right? I'm not watching actresses who are uglier than the 45-year-old waitress who gives me fried alligator at the local seafood place. Like, why would I waste my time with that? That's the brown M&M. It's like, you didn't even, these mages who were always described as being beautiful, you play the games, they're beautiful, you cast ugly women, obviously you're not taking the source material seriously at all. And then after, like, they're like, Henry Cavill always wanted us to be true to the source material. What a jerk. It's like, he's my boy, I guess. Never had a Facebook or Twitter account and never will. Facebook was actually really cool when it started, back when you had a valid college email address. Yeah. Facebook, again, it's always good when it starts. Facebook got converted into a platform that's not enjoyable, that's there to monetize you over 10 years ago. But because of the inertia, because everybody's still on Facebook, everybody just kept using it. And so, it kind of remains what it is, even though it hasn't really been fun to use in years and years. It's just a way for people to humiliate themselves and look at ads. Heat 2 will be like one of those direct-to-video sequels that had nothing to do with the predecessor apart from the title. Val Kilmer not being able to talk made Top Gun Maverick really weird. Yeah, they used like an AI voice or something. Did you see Chained Echoes yet? It's a pixel art JRPG that gets raving reviews on Steam. I have not. I have not seen that yet. I don't know. Maybe we'll play a game here in a minute. I was trying to think if there's anything else big to talk about. Oh, remote work. So I'm engaging in a kind of remote work right now. This is remote work. I think what a lot of people are sleeping on with the Metaverse thing is its practical applications for remote work. And I've made some videos on this, and I've done an article on this called The Metaverse Will Suck and You Will Use It. Metaverse stuff, like virtual reality, offers a big benefit to employers that people right now are not seeing because they still are viewing VR as a toy. And honestly, Facebook is partly responsible for this. Most of their promotion around the metaverse is for its toy potential, its creative or fun potential. And maybe that's where they're trying to get people maybe to buy the headsets for fun reasons, and then when it's time to use them for productive reasons, they already have them. But the new Meta headset, it's really designed around productivity. It has cameras, augmented reality. You could look down and see a keyboard kind of stuff. You can look up some videos on people doing work in the metaverse. So employers are going to be the ones who really enforce this. And it only takes a couple of big players to jump with 2 feet into the metaverse idea and make their remote employees use headsets for everybody to get in line. Same reason that, like, your phone probably doesn't have a headphone jack anymore. All it took was Apple to say, we're getting rid of the headphone jack and making you use other kinds of headphones, like making you buy Bluetooth headphones. All it took was Apple to do that, and every other big company fell in line, except for Sony. Sony still has the headphone jack, but Samsung and HTC, all of these started to drop headphone jacks, even though it's completely anti-consumer. There's no reason to get rid of the headphone jack in terms of space. You're removing a thing that lets you interface with like every audio device for the past 100 years. And there's no such thing as digital audio. Why get rid of it? It's an anti-consumer move. But all it took was one big player to do it, and then all the other companies were going to fall in line. It'll be the same thing with the Meta headset. Yeah, workers don't want to put on weird goggles to do work, but for the employer, it's a big benefit. And here's why. A lot of people don't get this. At least two reasons. The two big ones. First big reason is that it allows your employees to collaborate the way that they would in a real office. Remote work, the way it is now, works fine for very specifically delineated tasks with very specific results. In other words, you're going to do this task and produce this result. Go now and do it. That's fine for remote work. Now, I've worked remotely at this point for like 7-8 years. I'm working remotely now. I work remotely as a writer, freelance writer, and things like that. So I do remote work. Like this is my job. My wife does remote work now, and she's basically on Zoom 8 hours a day because of the way that she does work. For people to replicate the office environment, you put on the goggles. There are people that are, in a virtual sense, physically near you. So if you need input from somebody, you can simply talk to them. You simply move in a virtual space over to them and talk to them, just like you would in an office. You can sit near somebody in an office and have small talk while you're working. That produces the social bonds between employees that helps enhance productivity in a lot of things. So in industries that require lots of collaboration between employees, the metaverse solves a big problem, which is how do you get people into the office in the post-pandemic world? Well, you get them into a virtual office. And in that virtual office, they can do all the things that they do in a normal office. They can collaborate freely in real time. They can move close to each other, further away from each other. You can, as an employer, and this is reason number 2, as an employer, you can better monitor what employees are doing with their productive time and how they're interacting with each other. If you're a manager, you can walk through your virtual space, see what employees are doing, see if they are being productive, and you can, in real time, gauge their task focus, see if they are maybe free to do something. You can interrupt what they're doing and say, hey, I need you to go over to Betty and help her with this for a minute and then get back to your task. With standard remote work, you can't do that. People are like, well, I have Zoom meetings and then I have my spreadsheets. Like, the office environment's a lot more than that, and employers are going to understand the value of it, even if employees don't. A lot of employees, especially men, prefer to just work alone in their own little cubicle and not be bothered and just do their tasks and collect their paycheck. But a lot of employers are going to want more employees interacting with each other, and the Metaverse headset will allow them to do that. Really, as bad as Facebook is being with their efforts to promote their Metaverse idea, they're the only company that's really taking it seriously. So they're probably the company that's going to be the hegemon. They're going to be the company that's producing the Metaverse spaces for all the corporations in 5 years. So anyway, I'll probably buy some Meta stock at the beginning of the new year because of the way, the tax year works. I'll put my money where my mouth is because I think a lot of people are thinking of it as a toy without thinking about why the new Metaverse headset was designed. Like, what's with this? It's a bad, Beat Saber is bad in it. It's like, it's not about Beat Saber, guys. It's about getting a bunch of employees into a virtual office where they can freely collaborate and work together. That's what Metaverse is about. But they're not selling it that way because it's not ready. Like, the productive side of it is not completely ready. But there's lots of entertainment to be had with your VR headset. So they're trying to sell people on fun. Get into the metaverse and have some fun designing a little room or something, or just hanging out with your friends in the metaverse. Then when it's time to be productive, people are already acclimated to the idea of virtual reality. So we're still several steps away from the full implementation. But when it comes, it's going to be irresistible for most people that are working in the tech sector, most people that are working in offices. And if you think from an employer's perspective, boom, it lets me monitor my remote employees to a much finer extent, lets me interact with them in a much better way, lets them interact with each other in a much more fluid and collaborative, productive way. It'll enhance employee productivity. And, more than that, the big companies are going to use it. So we're going to want to use it too. So in 5 years, expect it to be an almost irresistible idea. There's also an advantage to employers, which is that you can hire anybody from anywhere. I don't have to just hire people that happen to work in San Jose. I don't even have to locate my company in San Jose anymore. I can have my company in Omaha, Nebraska, and I can hire people from New Orleans and Houston and Oklahoma City to work in my company and to come to my office and collaborate together on the products that we're imagining. I can hire engineers from anywhere in the world to come and work in my office, and I can pay them according to whatever they want to be paid. I could save a lot of money because I can hire somebody from Houston that doesn't need to work for a San Jose salary. If you're a worker in Houston, you can work whatever job you want. You can get a higher pay without having to move to San Jose because they'll basically, the employee cost will split the difference is the way the economics usually end up working out. You're going to have a more averaging of wages, which means, yeah, if you work in San Jose, you might have some threats, but if you're anywhere else, your wages are going to rise a little bit. If you're able to like jump into this. And if you're an employee, that's the advantage. You could live in BFE and then work for a tech company and collaborate in real time in the office. So a lot of people don't see those advantages. Now, there's a dystopian side to that, which is that it does things like track eye movement. Employers can have really fine control over what you're doing while you have the headset on, meaning they can be like, Jan, you're not looking at the slide because the headset tracks your eye movement. If you're just like disengaged or even like turning on your external cameras and like looking around your room and like writing your grocery list or something, you'd be like, Jan, you're not looking at the slide, Jan. We noticed that you tracked your eye movements and they indicated that you were bored. So here's another task for you to do. But counter to that, what do you want to do when you want to leave work? It's 5 o'clock. You're done for the day. You take the glasses off. You walk into your kitchen and make dinner. That's going to be great for workers. People don't think, I talk about how dystopian it is, but it'll actually offer a lot of advantages for workers who work remotely. To be able to be unavailable by simply taking off the goggles. To leave work by taking off the weird goggles. And just be at home already. Take off the goggles, turn on the TV. Take off the goggles, go eat a sandwich. You don't have to eat out anymore. You don't have to go like to some like taco truck outside of your office where you spend your meager earnings on overpriced garbage. You can make healthy food at home. Always. People they're still thinking of it as a toy and they're not seeing the advantages it gives to like the workspace, and they're not seeing the advantages it gives to workers. Workers love to work remotely because it's great, right? It lets you be at home and all the advantages of that. Yeah, Kai says the workplace application will come like MS Teams out of the blue, will be implemented every time simultaneously and magically will go hand in hand with the big event that justifies its use everywhere. That's quite possible. And we already had a big event. We had the pandemic. There's going to be another one like that. And the product will be ready to sell. It's just like Zoom. Everyone will just jump on Zoom. It's like Zoom, for whatever reason, became the thing. There'll be some hegemonic use of the metaverse and everyone will jump onto it. And you have to think about this like, for a lot of people are like, oh, it's an investment without a payoff. Not true. Why do companies buy their employees like MacBooks? Those are expensive. It's because it gives them control. It gives them more productivity out of their workers to buy them a computer that works and does the job versus requiring, their employee to buy it or trying to work around that. So yeah, $1,500 is a lot for a headset. But if you have a team of 10 people and you pay $15,000 for it, all tax deductible as an investment expense, that's $16,000. Maybe you can cut a person. You're saving 50 grand right there, right? If it increases productivity by $16,000 over the course of 5 years or 4 years, because you're going to depreciate it by a quarter every year. So you're going to buy a new one every 4 years, thereabouts. That's the way it usually works for taxes. So you do 25% depreciation year over year for your assets, and then you buy new ones. So yeah, will you get $15,000 worth of productivity out of your workers over the course of 4 years? Chances are is yes, especially if it allows you to hire workers from outside that maybe save you $15,000 over 4 years worth of wages. So you don't have to hire people from San Jose. You can hire people from Houston, pay them $3,000 less, or even pay them $5,000 less, but give them a free headset. This is somebody figured out that like the value of a MacBook to female workers is $5,000. I can pay them $5,000 less per year if I give them a new MacBook, which is $2,000. It's like a $3,000 savings to just give them a computer. Here's a computer for working here. Give them a new computer every year. It saves you like $5 grand. It's crazy to think about. In early 2020, Microsoft Teams suddenly showed up to enable digital project collaboration. The thing is I used that stuff like way before that. I used all kinds of collaboration tools back in the teens because I've worked remotely for like 10 years now. So, I've been using this stuff for writing books and things for a long time, for collaborating on games and game design. Like, all this stuff is old to me. But for workers who are used to working in the office, it's new. And then, boom, it becomes a hegemonic thing because the product's ready to go. And then all of a sudden, everybody's using it. Remote work might change a lot regarding domestic relations, assuming you have them. Assuming you have domestic relations. Most examples on TV present its disruptive reality. The housewife can't endure the presence of her husband. I see that, but, you know, I mean, my wife and I both work from home, and it's way better. When the pandemic happened, I mean, I don't want to get into too much personal stuff. You know what I mean? But when the pandemic happened and my wife was no longer commuting, it saves 2 hours a day, you know, getting in and out of your car and doing all that other kind of crap. You're available during the day for emergencies. You have a lunch break where you can go spend time with your kids, which is where you want to be. You know, people could have, people who are already married at least could have better sex lives. Not to get too personal with people's idea of this, but like, you think about our busy lives where you cram sexual relations into like right before bed, right before you go to sleep. You know, people could do that at different times during the day when they're more excited to do it, where they're more awake and they're more engaged with their partner, rather than like falling into bed asleep at night at the end of the day, exhausted from all the work. Like, you're still energetic at 1 PM and you have a break. So it could actually improve a lot of domestic relations. I think the danger is that if you're meeting people in the metaverse, you're still meeting people. I've known multiple people who've gotten married to people they met on World of Warcraft. So you can still meet and engage in romantic relationships with people in a virtual sense. Just eventually you have to figure out how to like move into the physical space with each other. But I've known at least 4 couples, I think, who have gotten married because of World of Warcraft. And this was now at this point almost 20 years ago that World of Warcraft hit, but people spent a lot of time with each other. Then they started spending time with each other outside the game, and then they moved across the country and got married. Like, wild, right? But you know that person on an emotional level already so intimately because you've had so many shared experiences. That's what World of Warcraft delivered. This is crazy and weird to think about. One of the ways you develop love is through shared experiences. World of Warcraft is a shared experience. You're talking to each other on Vent or TeamSpeak or whatever it was back in the day. You're talking to each other and experiencing something. Even if it's killing a dragon is an experience that you're doing together, and you're having a lot of fun with that person. You're sharing an experience. You're getting to know that person emotionally and know their mind, and you fall in love with that person. You fall in love with who they are, not just what that person looks like. So then when you go off of World of Warcraft and you maybe have a video chat, there were no the video chats were not really a big thing back in like 2005. But then eventually you move into the physical space with each other, and the emotional bond is already there. So that when you get married, like, your emotional life isn't nearly as disturbed by the cycle of infatuation. And in fact, like, the physical part of it, you're basically getting married at the height of the physical part of it, which is really enjoyable, rather than what most people do now, which is they get married on the tail end of that. Like, they're together for like 3-4 years, then they get married because of the constraints of the modern society. So like, the height of their sexual interest towards each other is waning by the time they get married. No wonder people have so much trouble with marriage, because we've put sex in a weird little box where we don't allow people to fully engage in the reproductive act towards its good, towards what it's ordered towards, right? We don't order it towards its natural conclusions at all anymore. So people get married when they're no longer sexually interested in the other party. How weird is that? But people do it, and then their marriages end up being, sexless, unenjoyable marriages, and they get divorced. It's not hard to see like all the problems that our society and our culture imposes upon marriage. I actually think remote work would solve a lot of those. Spending extra time with your spouse does not mean you're going to have conflict If it's the opposite, you're having more shared experiences with your spouse, you will love them more. Any conflict that happens is temporary, because then when you resolve the conflict, you're in a more stable state. Going from spending 0 time with your spouse to spending all day with your spouse may create new conflicts. But once you iron those out, like, you're going to be in a much better position than somebody who spends 30 minutes a day talking to their spouse and 0 time just being with them and having shared experiences with them and things like that. So remote work has the opportunity to vastly improve human relations, the real human relations that matter, like our marriages, because we get to spend time with each other. In late 2019, a lot of IT work was getting SharePoint sites set up and running, getting companies on Teams. It was eerie how close to the wire we were on implementation before the big need. Yeah. It might save the commute, but you don't get all those experiences of a social nature. You're just at home all the time. That's what the metaverse solves. It gives you the social experiences. That's my point. I can imagine single people becoming even lonelier. I can imagine that, but they'll actually be less lonelier because they'll be interacting with other humans all day long. They'll be in a shared space. Person next to them chats and they're like, I heard this about Ukraine. And then you could be like, well, I heard that about Ukraine. And and this is kind of missing from Twitter because people bang 140 characters at each other. You have this emotional kind of mixing of like, what's your perspective and my perspective, and let's have a human conversation. Let me see if I can find a video that just kind of describes this. There's a guy who, it's like I worked in the metaverse for one day. Or for like a week. Let me find it. Here it is. It's just a really, let's see if I can. Here, I'll just share it real quick because I watched this one and it's like, oh, yeah, this, you can see the like beginnings of this. So you can watch that a little bit later. So it will actually solve that problem, believe it or not. The same way World of Warcraft solved a lot of lonely problems, created marriages, right? If it wasn't for World of Warcraft, there were times in my life where I would have been incredibly lonely because there would have been no way for me to interact with my friends or with any other people. I was just in a place where I couldn't physically get with other people or see my friends. I was too far away, and the thing is, the metaverse makes it less like a computer relationship. It's not email. It's not chat. It's vocal the whole time. You see the person's eyes. They're going to have a really detailed avatars of people's faces, so it's much more like you're sitting in the room with them. But people are thinking of like VR as a toy. They're not thinking like what it's going to be 5 years from now. And it's going to be crazy. I've been through an interview spree recently, and home office was a topic in every single one. The employer consensus: some home office is fine, but 2 to 3 days in the office is required. Yeah, we want you present. We want you to be present with the other people, collaborating with them. We want to know you. We want you to know your workers and want to help them and know what they're doing. You need employees to have an overlap of knowing what others are doing so that they can properly do their tasks. If you're just doing everything by email, it's really hard. I've done it, but it's really hard for a lot of stuff. The largest proportion of modern relationships start online, so this does track true, followed by meeting in bar, restaurants, then going through friends, then coworkers. Yeah. There's an AI program that's trained on real footage of real locations that can convert fake-looking video game landscapes to look photoreal. Such things will revolutionize CGI. Yes, I said this back in 2016, Hardwick. I was like, your GPU will be able to render such high quality background assets. Like this could be the filmmaker boom. I mean, obviously I'm not implementing it because I'm not a filmmaker, but somebody in their basement could make a full CGI landscape and put people into it. That's every bit as good as Marvel within a couple of years, just with an RTX video card, rendering it almost in real time. And not only that, but think about how creative you could be seeing your thing rendered in real time. I'm going to move this, I'm going to paint this, I'm going to do this. So you don't have to wait forever for the scene to render and be like, we need to change that. It's like you can see it in real time. Then yeah, you can use the AI to re-render it and make it really crisp. That's going to be awesome. It's going to make it so that you have far fewer people required to make a good movie. People can be more creative. They can come up with new things. Think about all the assets that just exist on the Unreal Store. You could make your entire CGI background in Unreal Engine 5, and it would look amazing. Especially because it's in the background, right? It's not the focus. You have the person, the actor is still the focus of the shot, but you have this beautiful background of it too. Do you think all homogenous male brick and mortar company can be effective even these days? Like a video game company, film company, etc. I don't know how to answer that. I think they can be. But I think every business has to operate in a kind of a hybrid mode. The reason Guitar Center has problems is that they really could be like the biggest used instrument seller, but they're still operating in this mode from like the year 1999, where like, people come in and buy a thing, and that's what you're expecting, versus people shopping online and then you ship it, or maybe they come in and pick it up after they bought it online, things like that. Remote work did the opposite though for singles, even less exposure. I actually think Metaverse will actually improve that, believe it or not. Like, it's weird to say that, but because you're in a closer relationship with people, I think you'll get to know people better and maybe even like them, maybe even want to date them. I recently had an interview for a position in an international association located in the US where I'd be working from South America. Haven't had a second call yet, sadly. I stop and think about that. It's like, imagine that I have a thing and like, I need someone on the ground in Brazil or something for my company. But I could still have you come into the office and like collaborate with other people on ideas and things. Like, that actually could be really useful. You have more social experiences like talking with coworkers and users who need technical support, but the instant I clock out, I'm just in my house by myself. I think that's why Mark Zuckerberg is emphasizing, like, here's this virtual comedy bar where you and the workers can go to after the day is done. It's like, oh, this is really lame. It's like, it is, but I could kind of see the purpose for it. It'd be like, you'd have to find ways to like interact with people outside of work too. Because I definitely see the point. Like, once you take the goggles off, like you're alone. It's like, hey, let's get off. Let's play some World of Warcraft or something together. Let's have a fun shared experience. My experience as employee too is that 2 to 3 are necessary, not just to get human interaction, but to work effectively and have team building going. Yeah, for project management, it's very important. Yeah, if you're going to manage other people, you need to see what they're doing and how they're being productive and not just what the result is. Do you think that if rendering capability gets that level, will cause a shift in media consumption? I think it could. I think we could have a much bigger diversity of art. Think of all the diversity that exists in the book space, but you have that with movies and with like science fiction movies and really crazy high budget things. Now you could have that a level of diversity with movies. That would be a huge boon. We kind of already have it with YouTube. We have a huge diversity, but it'd be even crazier because you could have even better production. Did you read about Barnes & Noble's turnaround? It's not okay, I'm going to push back. It's not a big turnaround. They are still in the red and losing money. They're losing a little bit less money. Barnes & Noble should have been closed long ago, right? They're still like $500 million in debt or something, or maybe $250 million in debt, which is a lot. So they're not turned around. I wouldn't say they've turned around. There's so much wrong with home office only as a single, spending work and free time in the same room, not going out with colleagues, not properly bonding. You'd have to find a different social outlet too for your own self. Like, take off your headset, go shoot some skeet, right? Take off your headset, go play D&D or something. You know what I mean? I'm personally, I like a little separation with work. I like to be a little bit more distant from work because I don't want it intruding on my personal thoughts in life. Like, if self-made movies could come out matching the movies today with $100 million budget, books will fall to the wayside. I don't think so. I don't think books will ever fall to the wayside because people enjoy reading them. I think that there'll just be more diversity for movies. I think there'll be more things that people enjoy rather than having to rewatch things from the 90s 100 times. There'd be something new they want to watch. I think remote is beneficial for family time. If you're not in meetings all day, you can really squeeze a lot of time in with your loved ones. Also visiting family too. Worst case, remote work makes it easier to deal with annoying coworkers, overzealous micromanager types. That's true. As someone who's been working as a remote writer for the past 5 years, I think you're right, but only after you've established social relationships. In my case, I'm feeling the isolation, the pain. But the thing is, like, I mean, I really, Mark Zuckerberg kind of gets this. Most people are not getting it. They're like, having proximity sound and things in your VR headset will actually help with that a lot. It'll be a lot less lonely. So far, my impression is that if you have a family, home office is great. If you're single, it's hell. Yeah. I mean, I could definitely see that. Currently looking for a day job so I could just be around people. I thought that too, that without physical presence at the workplace, lonely people might suffer even more. But imagine how toxic and or alienating those relationships tend to be. I have moved away from online shopping and gone fully back to brick and mortar. The human interaction, the service is just priceless to me now. I value it so much. The only problem is a lot of brick and mortar stores, the service has gone way downhill. Like, you can go to Target, like a big store, and it's like, it's hard to get someone to help you buy something. It's like, I want to buy this thing. I'm going to open this cabinet and give me this video game. It's like, can't find anyone to do it. And they're like, no one pays attention to you. Because people are, I don't know, Zoomers have lost the ability to be good employees. You know, I moved to a different state for work, and then the pandemic happened. I felt like I was in a box the first year with the lockdown. I had a friend that happened. He moved to Seattle, and then people were like, no, they came up with this, they called them pods. It's like a group of people that they're okay interacting with. It's like, you're not part of our pod. You can't hang out with us. It's like, man, this really messed a lot of people up. Really sad. A virtual work experience might improve, at least on a technical level, the way we socialize virtually. Also might give you a chance to get acquainted with people with better things in common with you. That's true. Like, think of World of Warcraft, but like work, right? So in World of Warcraft, you're in a place, a virtual place. Like, you're walking around Ironforge. You see somebody, you can talk to them, chat with them. You know, you don't have a proximity thing, but you can use /S and talk to the people around you. But now you're going to do it with your voice. And rather than having an avatar that's a night elf, it's something that's more like you. And rather than it being Ironforge, a place where you're doing business in Ironforge, you're buying and selling your trade goods, you know, you're crafting things for people, you're doing real work, you're actually collaborating on whatever your project is, you're programming, you're writing, you're doing marketing, you're designing marketing materials, whatever you happen to be doing, you're doing it collaboratively with other people next to them. So like, anytime you need a little interrupt from your focus, and you can talk to a person, you can do those things. You can have those little interrupts of focus. You need focus interrupts, believe it or not. If you're just in a box with no distractions, it's actually really bad for productivity, because it starts to make you go crazy. You need to be able to look away and look out a window and like see some trees. So making metaverse spaces that have more things like that is going to be maybe a challenge, but you'll have people around you, which is going to be an improvement. Yeah, a lot of employees just have a bad attitude. One thing I noticed, this is a weird thing, going to Texas, it's like the service in Texas is just worse than it is in California. And I'm not sure why that is. You know, I think it's maybe that the people who can avoid retail work do. Like, there's more job opportunities in Texas to not do retail. So the people, and in California, there's less job opportunities. So the higher quality workers end up in the lower quality jobs, like working at In-N-Out. But like, yeah, in Texas, the service is just generally worse than it is in California. Like all the little retail, you go to the Verizon store and it's bad service compared to California. You go to like the fast food place, it's bad service even compared to California, right? It's just like worse service across the board. I guess the only exception might be like better restaurants maybe. But when it comes to like the retail space, the service across the board has been worse in Texas than it is in California. One of the things that's definitely worse. Kerry Conran tried making a movie in his basement with CGI backgrounds, but wound up meeting a producer and making the movie Sky Captain for Paramount. Oh, that's cool. That was a long time ago. Think about what you could do now. I think it'll be a lot crazier. Anyway, I'm gonna go grab a console. What time is it? It's almost 3. Almost done here. Let me link some books. I think we'll skip the games today. I wasn't planning on playing games. I just kind of wanted to chat with everybody about this stuff. I think the remote work is the big one, because people are like, whoa, yeah, this could be a huge economic change. It's already going on. What's going to change it further? And I think I will be very honest that I think Meta is the only company that's taking it fully seriously. Microsoft is taking it seriously. They've had HoloLens stuff for years they've been developing. Microsoft is pretty serious. Meta is the most serious. Meta is probably doing everything wrong, but they're just by being in a position where they're taking it seriously, they're probably going to come out on top. And they're probably going to be the hegemon for whatever metaverse kind of thing you have, with Microsoft being in the mix as well, and maybe even having somewhat of an alliance kind of situation between Meta and Microsoft. Microsoft makes hardware or has special, integrates Microsoft Word, and their whole productivity software is integrated into the metaverse. So I think those are the two big companies to watch out for. I think Apple is starting to catch on. I think Apple will design a really high quality headset in the next year or two that will come out and shake things up even more and push things even further forward. You can expect when Apple designs a headset that their headset will be, their first generation of stuff is always fairly affordable. So I imagine it's going to be high quality, but it will be within the realm of reason. I would expect it to be maybe $1,000 headset versus $1,500. It will fully integrate with all your Apple devices in a way that people immediately want and pick up on. Where like they can have their headset on and look down at their Apple Watch and see like the screen from their Apple Watch pop up. Or like, there'll be accessories that fully integrate. Your phone will integrate with it more fully, where you could see your phone screen and you could see text messages pop up in the corner, like in a thing. Like it'll fully integrate with Apple's ecosystem in a way that immediately people are going to jump on it. And I know that that's what Apple does, is like it's not just that they make good products, they make their products kind of cross-pollinate with all their other products in a way that makes it hard to not be an Apple customer and just not buy all Apple products, right? The AirPods, and I know because like my wife has all Apple products, and we've talked about this. It's like, she's like, I have nothing against switching to Android, but I already have all these Apple products, and each time you buy one, it works better with the ones that you already have. So like you have the iPhone, the AirPods work better with the iPhone than with other phones. And you can buy other like AirPod like things, but they don't work as good as the Apple ones. The Apple Watch integrates fully. Like everything just works correctly with it. You don't have to think about it a lot. And each time you add a new device, it enhances all your other ones in a way that others don't. Like I had a smartwatch that kind of worked with my Android phone, but it just was worse than a real watch. So I got rid of it. It didn't stop me from having to pull out my phone to see text messages and things like that. So Apple will come out with a headset that will just like knock people's socks off as far as its integration with things. It'll make that productivity that much more smooth. And then, it'll allow people to work. I don't think Apple will, Apple may invest in the virtual space thing. They'll probably be like Apple Spaces or like, Apple boxes, or I don't know what they'll call it. They'll come up with some kind of thing that allows people to have an Apple space. But I think Meta will be the one that will have the actual producing the actual virtual spaces that people will rent from the company to use. Rather than paying $10,000 a month to rent a space in San Jose, you pay Meta $100 a month for a huge infinite virtual office with as many different things as you want. Like it can actually be really huge, and Meta can make a crap ton of money off of it too. And that's what I think they're banking on. It's like, we get people in this, and then we can really sell them on a lot of products, and we can advertise to them. It's like you look over and it tracks your eyes, and it's like, here's an ad. They could do lots of things like that. So anyway, you'll probably see those big players jumping into the space, but Meta, because they are taking it really seriously, is probably going to be the one that's going to be the hegemon, because they are the only ones actually taking it really, really seriously. Zoomers never had the capability to be good employees. Zoomer hate, but seriously though, I think the phones and their addiction to them has made them much more socially inept for service jobs. I noticed that. Like people, like guys in Target who are like 20 will be like looking at their phone. I'd be like, hey, hello, can you open this cabinet? I want to get a Nintendo. Can you open it, please? Huh? Oh, let me call someone. Okay, call whoever needs to be called to open this thing. I'm trying to give you money. It's like, what? Huh? Dude was ahead of his time. Oh yeah, with the, yeah. It's like I'm on this not because I'm trying to sell Meta stock. Meta's not paying me anything to say this. It's because I want people to be prepared and to think about how things might actually be, because it's really easy to miss these things. And right now, the attitude is like, oh, this is dumb, until everybody's using it. And then you'll be like, oh, David was right. Just like he was right about buying toilet paper before the pandemic and things like that, right? There's one thing I was definitely wrong on, is that I thought Biden would be out of office by now. I really thought that they would get him out of office because he's clearly got Alzheimer's or something else going on. He's clearly got dementia. Like, he shouldn't be president. But I don't know. They're keeping him in there, I guess, because they don't really need for him to leave. They can, the party can run everything they need to while he is actually there. Yeah. I was recently rewatching The Rocketeer, and the vivid portrayal of the 1930s small town life made me sad about how much society's changed since then. It has, but go out to a small town in Texas. It's really not that different now. Really isn't. We live in urban environments, so we think it's different, but it's not that different. I can go down the street to like the old town here, and it's just like it was. Just walk around different shops, go to the bar, talk to people. People are really friendly in Texas. You can make a friend anywhere. I had a conversation with a guy at the grocery store about chickens and how to keep chickens. And it's just like, in California, you'd never have that conversation. Someone would think you're weird for talking to them, or they would be weird talking to you, but it's not like that in Texas. You can just make friends. Everybody's friendly. So it's like that. It's still like that, but you got to go somewhere else. Yeah, Metastock's pretty cheap. I think it's only going to go up. But I'll probably wait till the new year before I start buying a bunch of it, because just for tax stuff, right? You want to buy it in the next tax year for tax stuff. Anyway, I was told you should just wait till the next year to buy it. That way it goes on the next year's taxes for whatever kind of capital gains or investment you're trying to calculate. Although you really only have to pay the capital gains when you sell it, so probably shouldn't worry about it. All right, guys, I think I'm going to call it here. Thanks for tuning in and watching. I'm going to relink the books. Let me find all the books I wrote this year. I'm going to link every book I wrote this year. Here we go. Al Shafalda. 5-Act Tragedy, but fantasy. Yeah, it'll make it easier. Like I said, the metaverse will suck and you will use it. I'll link the article. You can read it at your leisure. I'm just kind of pushing back on myself a little bit. It's like, no, this actually, one of the reasons it will be a thing is because people are going to, oh, I forgot I also had a Kindle Vela story, Lawless Darkness. You can read that. What else do we have here? Oh, yes, the Gen Y book, Generation Y. You can get it for free. Assembled and edited by J.D. Cowan. Pulp Rock came out this year. Man, I did a lot of crap. I'm really surprised how much stuff I did, considering I had to move. And what's the next one? Did I link Pulp Rock? Yes. And Shadow and Smoke came out this year. Definitely read the series. I'll just link the whole series too. Moon Song. I think 2023 will be a cool year. So anyway, check it out. Go ahead and grab it. And I'll see you guys next time. Oh, that's a lot of stuff I did this year. I'm impressed with myself. Have a great 2023. Have a good, happy new year. I think we're going to set off some fireworks because you can do that in Texas. People are setting them off for Christmas. So I think we're going to do that tonight. And I'll have more announcements on the channel for stuff like channel memberships and offering value that way. And, kind of what I have planned for content and I'm just going to do it. So have a great one, and I'll see you all next time.